The Ministry of Statistics announced a new series of CPI changing the base year from 2011-12 to 2023-24. Now, base years are changed because over the years, people's consumption patterns change. In the new series, the weight for food has fallen by about 9 percentage points to around 37%. The Ministry of Statistics has provided the comparable back series for only 12 months of 2025. The surprise for the market was that as per this back series, although the headline inflation for CPI for 2025 is same in the old series and in the new series, food CPI is a good 156 basis points higher, 1.5 percentage points higher. Core CPI is lower by 1.5 percentage points or 155 basis points. To understand more of the difference between the two series and other questions, I have with me the Secretary of the Ministry of Statistics, Dr. Saurabh Garg. Dr. Garg, good morning and thank you very much for joining us. A big thank you from actually the entire country for the very good work that the MOSPI is doing under you, recasting series, adding new data. But first, the questions on the CPI series itself. You all have given only at a headline and subgroup level the connectivity. If you can give us, when will you give us the more granular detail of the back series? Because that will be needed even for policymakers and, of course, for economists and analysts.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Pleasure to be speaking about the CPI and the changes in the CPI. Regarding the back series, as you would have noticed that for the year of 2025, for the 12 months, both the inflation numbers month to month are available, both in the old and the new series. And for the period going right up to Jan 2013, we have given a linking factor, which links the index of the old series and the new series, so that whatever comparisons and changes or need to be done by any researcher, that can be done. Now, specifically, we've also given this at the state level and at the national level. You would realize that in the new series, a number of items have been introduced and a number of items have been dropped. It's not possible to get the prices of those, and which many of them non-existent items, which may not have existed in Jan 2013. So what is the international norm is to give a linking factor, which links the index of the two series, and which is what we have given. Further detailing, as may be required, we have an expert group to look at that. And in case there are certain more details required, they can have a look at it. And over the next few months, in case there are some details which are possible, we will take the advice of the expert group on that.
Okay, no, I take your point, sir. You have given us linking factor at a headline level. But, there will be many subgroups where it will be available. After all, the addition and deletion is not huge. So by when approximately can we get a linking factor for the other subgroups, which are common?
Yeah. So you must also realize that in the earlier series, we had 6 groups.
Yes.
And now we have 12 divisions. Within the groups also, there have been a lot of changes of what items are included and not included.
Okay.
For example, in housing, now you have utilities which are part of the housing and which is the international norm. We have a separate classification for restaurant and accommodation services, so that prepared food moves from the food group to the division for restaurant and accommodation services. And similar changes are there across other groups, divisions, and in the items. So I will not be able to give you a firm date, but as I mentioned, the expert group is seized of the matter. And over the next few months, we will see what other color that we can give, which will help researchers and forecasters.
So we should get it in 2026, you're saying, if any additional linking factors?
Yes, if at all it's feasible, it's technically possible. But as I said, the international norm is what we have followed, and we have given whatever is internationally accepted.
Fair enough, sir. Now let me come to the internals and the question that I raised when I introduced the topic itself. Surprisingly, food has, shown much higher inflation almost 2 percentage points higher inflation. And the guess even for January has come in way different. Everybody gave us a nil number in our poll, and it has come in 2.1% higher inflation. What is accounting for this higher food inflation? Is it because you are looking at more districts and more places? Is that why there is a difference?
So a combination of factors. Number one is obviously the number of markets has increased from around 2,300 to around 2,900 markets. So our reach both in the urban and the rural areas has increased. That's number one. Number two, the weights within the food items of different items have changed. For example, cereals have considerably reduced,
Yes,
keeping in view the consumption patterns. Fruits have increased. Okay. Fish, meat, dairy products have increased. Barley and millets, these products have entered the food basket. So there's been a change in the items themselves. And regarding month to month, obviously, if there are item changes, it will depend on which items have entered the basket. And if there have been changes in prices in that item, that will get reflected.
Okay. Okay, then I have a similar question with core as well. Core CPI, which is, excluding food and fuel for the benefit of our viewers, that inflation has come in way lower, almost 2 percentage points lower. And Reserve Bank looks at that very closely. That makes a seminal difference to inflation expectations going forward. Why is it so much lower?
So again, as I mentioned, number one, in housing, utilities are a part of housing, and utilities depends on what the price changes are there. Let me also just mention that we look at changes in price and not the level of the prices themselves. So let's say even if there are high prices in certain product, but if month to month there is no change, that won't get reflected in the inflation numbers. So given the greater granularity now that we give, it's easier for everyone to look at what items and what sectors the prices have changed. And I think that's where the inputs would be for policymakers, that they are able to, in many cases at the item level or at a subsector or a sectoral level, one will know what the changes are and therefore figure out whether it's a supply side issue, it's a demand side issue, and take appropriate policy actions.
No, I take your point when you say that, you all are not concerned about the level of prices, but about how much they have changed year on year. But even then, rental inflation at 2% looks a little out of reality, anecdotally speaking, more so because, your urban inflation is lower than rural housing inflation, which has come for the first time. As well, the level of inflation is lower than many major cities in the world. So it's a little surprising that rental inflation should have come in so low. Is it that the new cities you have chosen have very little inflation? What explains this very low housing inflation?
Yeah, so the basis for choosing the cities and the rural areas is entirely keeping in view the stratified sampling procedures that we use and looking at the household consumption expenditure survey, where in the weights in the HCES. Now, coming specifically to the issue that you have mentioned, we take the rental data from somewhere around 16,000 data points in the urban areas and around 4,000 in the rural areas. So that's the data that we have. So the number of data points are huge. Where I think the difference is on anecdotal information, which is primarily might be from some of the major metropolitan towns. But given that we are representative of the country, so and the data points will represent the combination of the data that we receive across the country, I think that's where the difference happens from anecdotal individual experience and what is seen in this. Coming on the rural prices changing more, perhaps that in this month, there have been greater changes in the rural areas than the urban areas. But as I mentioned, that we look to ensure that the basis that we give the information is representative of the country as a whole, and that in terms of statistically robust mechanisms that we follow a procedure transparently given in the open data.
Okay, that probably answers my next question, because in the new housing series, it's very stable month on month for 2025, whereas in the past we have had, jumpiness when we have housing inflation. So, I mean, how do you explain this? How is it smoother?
Yeah. One of the reasons for that jumpiness was that we had included employer-given household or government-provided accommodation. And any change in the house rent due to a policy division would suddenly show up in the inflation, which is incorrect. So what we do in the new rental series, we ask the householder, depending on when is the next change going to happen? And there is a panel which we keep constant for 6 months, and the panel of the houses change. So we give an actual on-the-ground experience of changes in rental, rather than rental changes being impacted due to policy changes at a corporate or at a government level.
Okay. So time permitting, I'll come back to this housing and food and core issues. But I wanted to first ask you about GDP as well. This core and food, although at the headline level, analysts and economists are not seriously disturbed. If you had given a much higher or lower CPI number, bond markets would have been in a tizzy. The markets are very calm after the new series. Can you prepare us for the GDP? Will there be any such dramatic changes within the components or the headline when the GDP series is released?
Yeah. So let me tell what are the changes that we are doing in the GDP, so that you get a sense of what you can expect. Number one is the household sector, or what is commonly called the informal sector. We now have a greater granular information available because of the annual survey of unincorporated sector enterprises, and because now we have the monthly data from the periodic labor force survey. Both these give us a much more detailed month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter indication of what is happening in the informal or the household sector. So that will get reflected. We will no longer have it primarily based on indicators or proxies, which is what we were doing. The second major change that we are doing is that we will be introducing double deflation fully in the manufacturing sector, and doing away with single deflation even in the services sector. But our sense is that while there could be some changes, one should not expect drastic change in numbers, either in terms of the levels or the growth rates. But there would obviously be some changes.
Okay, that's a very important point that you are giving us as we prepare for February 27th. I have to take a break. For Bazaar viewers, it's time for Chartbusters, but I have a few more questions for Dr. Garg, and you can see that entire show after Market Hours.